welcome. This is Preeti. I am so glad you're joining me today. Today I'm using this Snowflake Stencil, which is new released Rubbernecker this month. And there are other stencils as well, but for today's video, I'm going to just showcase this particular stencil called Snowflake. And we're going to create 4 different cards using this stencil. I'm going to show you multiple techniques and different products that you can use that you may be having in your stash already. So for the first one here, I'm starting off with this UPO paper, which is kind of a plastic paper. If you don't have a UPO paper, you can try using glossy cardstock. And then I'm going to do some alcohol ink blending onto this UPO paper. The UPO paper helps the alcohol inks to move easily, and that's the reason why I'm using this. Again, there are quite a few different techniques using this stencils that I'm showing you. You're not limited to doing the ones that I'm showing. My alcohol ink squirted, and you see there all over my hand I had ink. Anyway, so what I was saying was I'm trying to show you different ways to use the stencil, so you're not limited to using just one kind, and that I'm also giving you options that to look around your stash and seeing what you have in your stash that you can add to make this particular to make these Christmas wintry cards. Anyway, so here you can see after I've blended all the alcohol ink, I am taking this acetate here. That paper is just a backing sheet to protect the acetate, and I'm going to use this sentiment. The sentiment comes from the Christmas sentiments which was released last year. And I went ahead and stamped and embossed it with white embossing ink in the center of that acetate. And it was important that I do that first before I do the second step. For the second step here, I am just putting the stencil over that acetate, and I'm taking this embossing paste. This paste, the one that I'm using, I think it was something that I had in my stash. There's so many different kind of embossing paste out there available. I'm just using this one, which is translucent, which means to say when it dries almost transparent. And I'm going to apply this only to the edges of my acetate. So I just want to create a very like a snowy edged window, more like if you see snow or ice sticking onto your windowsill, you see that edges, but they're not perfect. So that's why when I'm adding this, you can see that it's not perfect, just snowflakes, but there's also additional background elements added along with that stencil, because the stencil is more of a background negative kind of stencil. So that means to say when you ink blend it, your snowflake will remain white. That's what I wanted to say. So you can see that there's a lot more of that embossing paste all over the surface. And then I went ahead and added some sprinkles on it to give it some glitter. Of course, it's snowflakes on the windowsill and they need to glitter. And then I've taken this frame which I cut using 2 rectangle nesting dies, and I'm going to adhere that acetate or this frame right over that white acetate that we just created. And you can see how beautiful all that sparkles and everything looks. And my idea is to adhere this panel onto this alcohol ink blended UPO paper, and then I'm going to just take away the excess acetate just using my scissors here. I'm going to create this to a shaker card. So all I'm doing is I'm adding some foam tape behind that frame, and then I'm going to add some sprinkles and then add this over that cardstock. I want to tell you, I'm not showing how I created the card or how I completed the card. I will show you the cards at the end. But I just wanted to focus more on how to use the stencil in different ways using your products that you may have. I kept the cards very simple, and when I show them, I will explain to you what I did at that time. Anyway, so now you can see here, I'm just adding some sprinkles inside it, except for this particular one. I just wanted to show you how I built the shaker element. It's very simple, very easy. And then I'm going to put the whole thing over that card base. And you can see how pretty it looks. It looks like a frosted glass window. I just love the look of it, and that's the first one. For the second one here, I'm going to start off with this this is just a Bristol Smooth watercolor, not Bristol, just a Bristol Smooth cardstock. And here I want to make sure that my stencil doesn't move while I'm blending. So I'm taking this Pixie spray, which is a light tacky spray, and I'm adding it to the back of the stencil. And then I'm going to place that onto the cardstock, and that'll help me from keeping the stencil in its place, especially because the stencil has so many intricate pieces to it. I don't want anything lifting up when I am blending, so that'll hold it really well. You don't really need to add this tape. I don't know why I added it, but anyway, it's right there. And then I'm taking this VersaFine black ink. I know it's black. Don't be shocked, but the end result is beautiful. And I'm going to just start adding this. And when you're adding this, try to use more of a tapping motion than like a blending motion, mainly because, as I said, this die has very tiny intricate pieces, not die, sorry, stencil, and sometimes they can easily lift up, and you don't want that. Even though I have the Pixie glue on it, adhesive on it, I didn't want to risk it. So if you see here, I'm sometimes larger places I try to blend, but most of the places, the smaller places where there are thinner pieces, I try to tap this black ink. And I'm just going to keep doing that. And then once I'm all done, you can see how well it is adhered. I couldn't even take it off. I had to kind of use like a spatula to pry it from the bottom, and then I'm just going to peel this, and look how beautiful that looks. And then I'm going to add some clear embossing powder. Because it's a pigment ink, the black VersaFine is a pigment ink, it stays wet for a while. And I'm going to use this clear pigment ink, and I'm going to just put it all over the place, and it'll adhere only to the black area where we blended. And then I'm going to heat set it, and then you can see all those beautiful white snowflakes popping up. And that's exactly what the stencil does. It keeps the snowflakes white. And once I've done blending, you will see that the paper changed. And the reason for that is, after I finished doing it, my son called up from school and he said he wanted me to pick him up. He wasn't feeling that well. And so I went there, and then I came back. I had to redo this, mainly because when I came back, I started recording and I thought I had turned on my video, and I did all this blending without showing. So I had to redo that entire process onto another cardstock. But this time I did the entire stencil, if you see that, not just on the edges, and that worked out very well, actually. So that's the reason why you see the the stencil paper, the image different here. And here I'm taking some color fuse inks in bright colors, purple, pink, and corally red, and I'm going to just blend it. And what's going to happen is all that black embossing, the clear embossing, is going to resist the ink from adhering anywhere but just the snowflakes. Remember, the snowflakes did not have any embossing on it because it was just masked from that stencil, and that's why you can do this beautiful tie-dye effect using your colors. So you can use any colors you want. I chose these colors. There's so many different color fuse inks in the Rubbernecker store, and you can definitely, and they're so rich and pigmented, they look beautiful. I did go a couple of times over it, mainly because I wanted it to be really vibrant, and you can see how beautiful, and it's like magic when all the snowflakes come to life. And you can see here how beautiful it looks. And then I'm just going to take a dry cloth and I'm going to just buff away any extra ink that is sitting on the surface. And you can see how beautiful that looks. And we're going to keep that aside. And we're going to move on to the third technique. For the third one here, I'm taking that stencil once more. I know my stencil's dirty, but it didn't matter for the next step. And I'm going to apply this Versamark ink all over the stencil, just giving it a good push, making sure every inch of that stencil is covered with Versamark ink. And I'm going to take my cutting plate here because I'm going to emboss this. So you can see you can really emboss this onto your cardstock. And I'm going to take watercolor cardstock here. The only thing is you want to make sure that the cardstock you're using for embossing with your stencil is a little thicker. If not, you can always add a couple more cardstocks to add some kind of a shim. And then sometimes even wetting the surface helps a bit. I didn't need to do anything. The cardstock was quite thick. My watercolor cardstock was quite thick, and I ran it through my embossing machine, my cutting machine, and here you can see how beautifully it's embossed. Of course, it's all black, which didn't matter because the embossing ink had transferred the black ink from my stencil, which was not a problem because I was going to now, what do you call, emboss it. So I just added the gold embossing ink now, embossing powder, and you can see now that the embossing powder is only adhering to the snowflakes, not to the background. You see how we flipped it from the first one where it was on the background, the black ink, but this time you're getting only the gold. So you can do this embossing technique with your stencil and create it and make a different look to it. And now I'm going to just spritz some water, and I'm going to use this, these are called, what are these called? These are called color burst inks from Ken Oliver, and I'm going to start dropping that onto the surface, and now only the background starts getting the color, and because the snowflakes are embossed, they will resist the color. And you see how beautiful it looks. It's so rich and vibrant. It looked like silk almost. I mean, I was just so blown away with those colors and the beauty of the snowflakes. Just stunning. And then I'm going to just heat set it and sop off all the extra water, and then you will see, I will just show it to you in a minute how beautiful this cardstock look. And I'm going to show you towards the end how I put them all together in cards. And that was a third background. Isn't that stunning? I mean, it's so beautiful. And we did it with stencil. And really, you can do this with any stencil. Rubbernecker has introduced quite a few stencils, which I will show you in the next few weeks, I promise you. And I'll show you different ways that I've used the stencil over the next few projects. Now, for the last one, I'm taking this tall piece of cardstock. I'm going to convert this into a slimline cardstock, and I'm going to just do a basic blend first. So I'm just using some distress inks here, and I'm just going to do a light blue, a little bit of a darker blue, and then I'm going to do the edges with the black. Now you can definitely do this with color fuse inks. Color fuse inks blend beautifully. I wanted these particular colors, and that's the reason why I'm using distress ink, but you can definitely use any inks that you have. And my ink, my fingers were so they were filled with paints and inks and alcohol inks, and I was transferring it onto my blended cardstock here. So I just took a post-it note and put my fingers on it so that I don't transfer any ink from my fingers to my card here, and that's the reason why you see that post-it note here. And here, just continuing to blend with the second blue shade, and then I'm going to take the black that you see on the side here, and I'm going to start blending that once I'm done blending the two blues. And here you can see I've taken the black soot here, and I'm going to start blending. But when I started to blend, I realized that the surface was wet, so it was not holding on, because these inks stay wet a bit, so they were not holding very well. But I realized even when it was dry and I started adding the black, it wasn't going on it very well. And it could also be because my brushes had some chalk ink on them, and that could be the reason. But anyway, I then decided to change the black color to VersaFine black ink, and that worked okay. But it was, at the end, it was all right. I liked that muted effect anyways, and I just pretty much blended everything, and that pretty much completed that base of it. And then once I was done with this, I took the stencil and I took a white pigment ink, and just all I did is just added just the snowflakes. You can see here I'm just taking out some snowflakes, just picking and choosing snowflakes, and I'm applying that white pigment ink through it. What it does is it gives like this very muted look of snowflakes. Like, I don't know how to explain that. It looks so dewy is what I wanted to say, like in a dark night. It's I don't know how to explain it, but it looks so beautiful. There is a technique called ghosting. It's a very old technique. It's been there for a long time. Kind of looks like that when you add white pigment ink through your stencil, and then it just has that it's like as if the snowflake is popping through the dark background. I mean, it's so subtle, but yet so beautiful. Of course, you can leave it right here, but I had to do more. So now what I did, I took that stencil once more, and then I took a different kind of paste. This is called crackling paste. So what it does is, once it dries up, it crackles and it looks so beautiful. This one was so distressed, and especially if you are, if you are like a mixed media artist who likes to do like you like to do scrapbooking and journaling. This looks so beautiful on a background for a winter scene, and you can add your pictures on it. Oh my goodness, I really liked how it turned out. You see how beautiful that stencil looks through that embossing paste? And now when it was dried, I don't know if you can see those tiny, tiny crackles all over. It looks so beautiful. And then I also added some dots here and there to add more to the background. It was such a beautiful background. Well, I'm just anyway, here are all the backgrounds that we created. This is the first one. This is the second one with the black. So I don't know what you call it, positive, and this would be probably the negative. And then here is the fourth one that we just created, and I'll show you the cards. And this is the card. All I did is I just took that same panel and adhered it just onto a top folding white note card because it was almost done, so I didn't need to do anything. For the second one here, the black one, I actually punched them out, or I die cut multiple circles in different sizes, and I adhered them to the bottom using some foam tapes and liquid glue, and then just stamped that sentiment. That's the same sentiment I used for every card, stamp set that I used for every card. This is the third one where we used the Ken Oliver Burst watercolor, and I just cut that using the Slimline Postage die that we have in the store, and I just adhered that onto a white cardstock. And for the third one here, I just added another sentiment onto another rectangle piece, and then I added some glitter all over, and you can see how beautiful it shines. And then I added some snowflakes even to the edges of that card as well. And here are the 4 cards. I really hope you enjoyed this video and you'll give one of them or all of them a go, and I will see you next time. Bye bye.